Hello, and welcome back to Pathfinder. I am the Podwife, and today I'll be guest hosting this Mother's Day special. This is part of a video series covering the various deities, factions, and NPCs in the Pathfinder role-playing game and its setting, the world of Golarion. Today, we're looking into a minor deity in the setting. There are many deific villainous forces in the Pathfinder RPG, from the Archdevils of Hell, to the Chitin Demagogues, to the Apocalypse Riders of Abaddon. But few evil forces will inspire the type of terror brought about by the horrifying demon lords of the Outer Rifts. We've already discussed Lamashtu, the mother of monsters and the queen of demons, back in the early days of this channel, but she is only one of a legion of demons. And among the demons of the Outer Rifts, few are quite as dangerous or active as Pazuzu, the king of the wind demons. Pazuzu is Lamashtu's most hated rival, and adores pestilence, possession, and spying on those who accidentally invoke his name. First things first, though. Content and spoiler warning. This video discusses one of the demon lords of the Pathfinder setting, and thus discusses the darker aspects of the system. While I will attempt to discuss things in a clinical and analytical manner, I will have to at least make references to demonic sacrifice, the desecration of corpses, and more generic villainous acts like murder. Happy Mother's Day! Seriously though, if any of these topics might disturb you, I suggest clicking off and checking back in for the next one. Also, this video spoils background elements of both the first edition Wrath of the Righteous adventure path and the second edition Seven Dooms for Sandpoint adventure path. These are just background details. I will essentially discuss the origins of characters who play a key role in those APs. That said, I won't be discussing the actual events of those APs, or how those characters interact with the campaigns in question. I'll call out the specific spoiler sections as they come up in the video, so keep your ears open. Before that, though, if you enjoyed this video and want to hear more Pathfinder lore, consider subscribing or commenting below. Or if you want to support the channel, check out Pathfinder's Patreon. Just $2 a month gets you access to all the scripts, as well as the audio files for all of his videos, all of which drop at least a week early. With that out of the way, let's move on to the history of Pazuzu. Pazuzu is the king of the wind demons, the demonic patron of all evil creatures which fly, harpies and rock demons most of all. He is the lord of the sky, bringing terrible winds and storms upon his foes, or carrying swarms of locusts to plague the innocent. He is also a master of temptation, making use of charms and possession to push even pure-hearted mortals into acts of heinous evil. He can hear his name no matter when or where it is spoken in the great beyond, and he takes frequent pleasure in meddling in mortal affairs. Despite his position as a demon lord as opposed to a full deity, his name inspires fear in the hearts of the world over, and his name is invoked all across Avestan and beyond, even by non-evil beings who seek his protection. Pazuzu is among the most ancient demons in existence. When demonkind first came about, as a result of magical experimentation by a wayward apocalypse rider, several immensely powerful demons rose to prominence, claiming slivers of divine power and ascending to demigod status. Among these were beings like Dagon and Abraxas, but most notable for this video are Lamashtu and Pazuzu. In the early years of creation, the demon lords were known to both compete and collaborate in equal portions, allowing greed, lust, and wrath to influence their relationships in a complex and ever-shifting web of alliances and enmities. Nowhere is this represented better than the relationship between Pazuzu and Lamashtu. In the age of creation, long before the imprisonment of Rovagug, Pazuzu and Lamashtu met and became filled with mutual lust. Seeking privacy, they entered the material plane and settled on the planet Golarion. There they gave into their carnal temptations, engaging in a violent tryst, the intensity of which threw up the earth around them and formed a jagged fault line. Even as they engaged one another, however, they created and birthed a terrible offspring. This pupating demon crept into the canyon his parents had created to wait out their encounter and continue his gestation. This was Uvaglor, the misbegotten prince, and we'll get back to him in a bit. For some time, Pazuzu and Lamashtu remained allies and lovers. It is likely they produced numerous horrific offspring, though records from this period are scarce, and such a claim is difficult to substantiate. Of course, theirs was not an exclusive relationship, and both fornicated with other beings as the mood struck them. Pazuzu, for example, is known to have coupled with an insectoid demon whose name has been lost to time. After their union, he expelled his breath of locusts, and from it was born the great demon Deskari. The young Lord of Pestilence then took up residence in his father's demonic realm, where he would remain until he came into his own as a demigod. Of course, Pazuzu was as corrupt and faithless as any demon, and so his loyalty to Lamashtu was not long for this world. The opportunity for his betrayal arose when Lamashtu lured Kirkanis, the primordial god of beasts, into a trap and absorbed his strength. This elevated her to full divinity, but left her weakened, for Kirkanis managed to pass a large portion of his power to his disciple Desna before he died. In her weakened state, Lamashtu returned to the outer rifts, and then Pazuzu struck. He stabbed his former lover with a spike of cold iron, and hurled her body into the depths of the outer rifts. Triumphant, Pazuzu then began his reign as the mightiest of demon lords. This period represented the height of Pazuzu's power. But it was not to last. Enraged, Lamashtu made the arduous journey out of the rifts and clawed her way back to the realm which she and Pazuzu had shared. She emerged a true goddess, full of a rage and fury the forces of demonkind had never before seen. Pazuzu, once Lamashtu's equal, was forced to flee before her new power. The Mother of Monsters reclaimed her territory, then asserted her power over the outer rifts with an iron fist. Pazuzu was driven to the edges of the demonic plane, where he eventually founded a new home in Haimavania. And thus, the stage was set for a cold war which would simmer for eons to come. Ever since her return, Lamashtu has reigned as the undisputed Queen of Demons. Her power is unmatched among demonkind, and no one dares to challenge her openly. Pazuzu, however, resists her control, and actively seeks to undermine her at every opportunity. It might seem curious that a mere demon lord can stand up to a full goddess, but Pazuzu is clever in his efforts. He takes advantage of Lamashtu's arrogance, for she considers him little more than a pest who can be crushed at her convenience. At the same time, Pazuzu is careful to never place himself squarely in the way of Lamashtu's direct interests. She remains fascinated by her pet project, the creation of increasingly bizarre and monstrous demonic offspring, and Pazuzu seems careful to wage his war such that it forces Lamashtu to split her attention. In truth, this has been of tremendous benefit to all of creation, for without Pazuzu acting as a distraction, Lamashtu might have unleashed far more horrific children upon the great beyond. At the same time, this rivalry also keeps Pazuzu himself in check, and he hasn't been able to put his twisted mind to more nefarious purposes. Though much of the conflict between these two tremendous forces takes place between their followers, they do clash more directly from time to time. Several sources claim that their cults have come to blows on numerous worlds throughout the Great Beyond, and many of these contests have resulted in violent clashes between the divine servitors of these divinities, or even manifestations of the gods themselves on rare occasions. Lamashtu considers these contests something of a game, since she doesn't believe that Pazuzu can reasonably threaten a full divinity. Pazuzu, though, recalls that Lamashtu herself once brought down the god Kirkanis, and so is always on the lookout for a chance to lay a decisive blow. While Lamashtu might not take her battles with Pazuzu seriously, her hatred for him cannot be overstated. She hopes to shatter his wings, taking away the gift of flight which he prizes above all things. This done, she plans to imprison him within her dungeons for at least a millennium, breaking his will before finally ending his suffering by consuming his heart. Lamashtu has made a habit of torturing and mutilating stand-ins for Pazuzu to bide her time and let out her frustrations. Her most recent outlet for her fury is her court jester. This captured rock demon has been broken, twisted, and killed innumerable times over the millennia, with Lamashtu working her dark powers to restore him to life just so her fun can continue. She named this wretched pet Uzuzap, an inversion of Pazuzu's name, and the poor creature is no longer capable of remembering a time before it was Lamashtu's plaything. Now, though, we need to return to Galarian. Spoilers from here until the next chapter in the video for some background details on the 7 dooms for Sandpoint AP. From the canyon, which his parents' fornications had formed, Uvalglor emerged into western Avestan during the Age of Anguish. The three-eyed avian demon delighted in sating his bloodlust on the local Verisian peoples. The Verisians, having only recently cast off the yoke of slavery under the now-collapsed Thessalonian Empire, lacked the ability to mount a meaningful resistance to this new horror, and so Uvalglor's sword claimed many Verisian lives. In desperation, the Varisian peoples cried out to Lamashtu herself, begging her to protect them from the monster who now ruled over them. Lamashtu was all too eager to strike out at the child she'd borne with her now hated rival, and so she sent her servants to fight Uvaglor. This, though, was a two-faced commitment, for even as the demons began to drive Uvaglor and his allies back, they turned upon the Varisians and began slaughtering them. This might have ended in disaster, had the Varisian hero Sesleru not taken action. Sesleru was a priestess of Ashava, and she channeled the light of her goddess to drive back the demons and cast Uvaglor into the maelstrom in the outer planes. Now, with all that context out of the way, let's get to the rundown. Pazuzu is a demon lord, a demigod who can grant divine power to his followers, but who cannot rival a true god for power. As a general rule of thumb, demigods could, at least back in 1st edition, be represented by in-game stats, where true gods cannot. Back in Bestiary 4, Pazuzu was listed as a CR30 creature, putting him at the high end of the known demigods, rivaling characters like Cernunos, the son of Erastil, and greatly surpassing several notable imperial lords, like Vildaeus, Regathiel, the Black Butterfly, and even the mighty Ashava. Pazuzu manifests himself as a humanoid figure with the body of a human, the head and talons of a demonic eagle, and a wicked scorpion's tail. 2 immense feathered wings protrude from his shoulders, granting him unparalleled mastery over flight. Supposedly, a snake hides beneath his robes in place of another notable appendage. With each breath, he exhales locusts and pests, and if he refrains from moving quickly, he becomes surrounded by a swarming cloud of insects. Because Pazuzu has been expressed in mechanical stats, we actually have a very clear picture of some of his other abilities. Famously, Pazuzu can hear his name whenever it is spoken aloud, no matter where the speaker is in the great beyond. Furthermore, if someone speaks Pazuzu's name 3 times in a single breath, Pazuzu gains even more information, learning that person's name and their exact location. Some cultists of Pazuzu will use this ability to gain his direct and immediate attention, but the Demon Lord despises this practice. He commands his followers to abstain from this practice, and promises to bring his wrath down upon those who perform it regardless. The utterance of Pazuzu's name 3 times also opens a door to another of the Demon Lord's powers, possession. Pazuzu has a strong affection for the art of possession, and can possess any target within a mile of him so long as he knows their name. However, if someone utters his name 3 times in the same breath, that distance limitation is lifted, and Pazuzu can possess them so long as they are on the same plane of existence. Some sources claim that Pazuzu uses this power only sparingly, employing it only in areas where he needs to invoke fear and improve his level of influence. Other sources, though, claim that he takes immense joy from possessing otherwise good people and ruining their lives. This is a task which he undertakes with deliberate care, picking apart every relationship his victims have over the course of months or years, until they are left with absolutely nothing. Many victims are completely broken by this process, and some even enter Pazuzu's service willingly thereafter, unable to function in the world without his commands. Wait a second. A character named Pazuzu who delights in possession? What could this possibly be a reference to? No, for real. What is this a reference to? My husband wrote this line into the script and didn't explain it. He mentioned it was a horror movie thing, but I don't watch horror movies, so I'm kind of in the dark here. If I had to guess, I'd probably say The Exorcist, but I don't know. If I'm right, please let me know in the comments. Mechanically, Pazuzu's possession is limited to 1 target at a time, and he can be driven out by dispelling effects like Dispel Magic, Spirit Damage, the Astral Property Rune, or the powers of the Exorcist or Soul Warden archetypes. That said, anyone who attempts to drive Pazuzu out of a target must exert substantial power to ensure that the possession is driven out for good. Otherwise, Pazuzu can simply relinquish his hold temporarily and reassert control at a later time. During a possession, he gains complete access to the thoughts of the target and the ability to force them to use whatever spells or abilities they have. Despite the emphasis placed on Pazuzu's love of possession, it is hardly his only ability. Due to his connection to locusts and insects, for example, he is immune to damage from swarms and can direct the motions of swarms close to him. His scorpion tail can act as a natural attack, and it contains a potent poison which can severely impact a target's mental capacities. As a master of flight, Pazuzu can manipulate the minds of those who join him in the sky by the power of their wings. Such creatures must succeed on a will save or be completely unable to attack him for a number of rounds. Lastly, Pazuzu can offer favors to others at a tremendous price. Anyone who makes a wish to Pazuzu finds themselves drawn into his influence, represented back in First Edition by an alignment shift to chaotic evil lasting a full week. Among Pazuzu's most dangerous abilities is his signature weapon, the Scepter of Shibeshet. Shibeshet, as we will discuss in a moment, is the palace from which Pazuzu rules his demonic realm, and this artifact is his symbol of rulership. The scepter is a black staff topped with a hook reminiscent of Pazuzu's demonic rune. The scepter is imbued with numerous magical powers, including the ability to instill fear in those who behold it, the ability to teleport to Pazuzu's hand from any distance, and the ability to function as a rod of cancellation. Most importantly, however, Pazuzu can transform the scepter into a longsword with maxed out fundamental runes and the unholy and keen property runes. This is the weapon he wields when he deigns to enter battle himself, though he will very occasionally lend it out to important or especially loyal agents. The king of the wind demons makes his home in Haimavania, his demonic realm in the abyss. Haimavania is notable among realms of the Outer Rifts for its position. The realm is located along one of the outermost crevices of the whole plane, giving it close proximity to the Maelstrom and the other adjacent planes. For this reason, Haimavania is a common route for interplanar travelers, especially those moving between the fiendish planes. Haimavania itself is defined in large part by its verticality. The realm stretches from the surface of the canyon, where travelers pass overhead, to its deepest depths, where powerful Qlipoth lie in wait for unsuspecting prey. The walls of the canyons are peppered with thousands of hidden caves and tunnels, each of which serves as a rookery for winged demons. When Pazuzu calls his forces to war, these agents pour out of the rift walls by the thousands, seeming to emerge from the very rocks themselves. While the whole realm is called Haimavania, the term technically refers to Pazuzu's capital city, a tightly packed collection of impossibly tall towers built upon a shelf protruding from the canyon wall. This city is filled with legions of denizens, from Vrock and fiendish harpies to half-fiend tengus and succubi. The sound of avian screeching and squawking is pervasive. Pazuzu has taken advantage of his realm's status along an interplanar travel route to recruit allies and agents from other fiendish realms. The river Styx flows through the base of his rift, and so more than a few daemons and divs from Abaddon call Haimavania home. Additionally, a legion of Erinyes devils have been stationed there at the command of the archdevil Moloch, though Pazuzu is actively working to ensnare them into his service. High above the city, built into the very walls of the rift itself, is Shibeshet, the personal rookery of Pazuzu himself. The king of the winged demons reigns from these twisted spires, attended by his most loyal servants. This palace serves as his sanctum, and access to it is tightly controlled. Moving on to Pazuzu's faith on Galarian, we unfortunately come to a bit of a stumbling block. Vanishingly little has been presented on Pazuzu's faith as an organization. His edicts are fairly straightforward: to tempt others to immoral acts, to revel in fight, and to possess or magically influence others to cause calamities. None of these are terribly complicated and would be fairly easy for followers to interpret. Paizo has not provided any information on a formal holy text for Pazuzu, so it's hard to say if no such text exists, or if it has simply not come up yet in the lore. What we do know is that Pazuzu is worshipped primarily by cultists, at least in Avestan, since his faith would understandably be outlawed in most of the Inner Sea region. These cultists operate mostly in the shadows, likely hiding any signs of their divine allegiance when they need to travel among non-believers. During the period of the Mendevian Crusade, however, cultists of Pazuzu would have practiced their faith more openly within the World Wound and in the surrounding lands. Cultists likely consist of a group of humanoid members of various ancestries, who take part in dark rituals in their god's name and offer sacrifices in the form of eyes and tongues taken from the enemies of the faith. Flighted or feathered ancestries are more common among the faithful of Pazuzu, and even monstrous entities like harpies or vrocs might join humanoid cults and be granted positions of honor. Cult members likely spend much of their time plotting how to spread the reputation of Pazuzu. This is considered a sacred act, but one which should be undertaken without the need of Pazuzu's direct intervention. The king of the wind demons has no interest in followers who require his aid for day-to-day tasks beyond the provision of divine spells, and followers who call upon him too frequently are likely to draw his scorn. Rituals among the cultists of Pazuzu are notable for their incorporation of sacrifice and dismemberment. When the faithful offer a sacrifice to their dark god, they often sacrifice a living creature, then remove the intestines and other entrails from the victim's body. These are then spread out in an area which will attract flying scavengers like corvids or vultures. Cultists will then reflect upon the teachings of Pazuzu as they observe the consumption of the offered viscera. Another common activity among cultists of Pazuzu is direct action against the followers of Lamashtu. Pazuzu is notable for his employment of evil champions, a practice which few other demon lords undertake to a significant degree. For this reason, cultists might be willing to confront Lamashtans more directly than might be expected. Raids on Lamashtan celebrations, like Allbirth as detailed in the travel guide, are likely somewhat common. Cultists on both sides of the conflict are beginning to suspect that the next direct conflict between their deities is on the horizon, and so are busy trying to understand when and where such a battle might break out. Temples and shrines of Pazuzu are typically located in places where winds are very strong, on the edges of cliffs, on mountaintops, or in the middle of deserts. Temples generally consist of at least one tower or spire, unless the terrain naturally offers views from high places. These sites are almost universally decorated with demonic runes and images of Pazuzu, with motifs including feathered wings, avian heads, scorpion tails, or writhing serpents. Blood and viscera stains likely accumulate over time at these facilities as sacrifices are performed. In the Inner Sea region, Pazuzu's faith is most notable in 3 locations: Varisia, Sarkoris, and the Isle of Kortos. Varisia is notable for the presence of Lamashtu's followers in the region, which has drawn Pazuzu's attention. At the same time, several of Pazuzu's past activities, which I won't address here to avoid spoilers, took place in Varisia, and his influence lingers even millennia later. Sarkoris, being the former site of the World Wound, also plays host to a disproportionately high number of Pazuzan cultists. This is true for most demonic cults, but is especially notable in this case due to the familial relationship between Pazuzu and Discari, who was central to the creation and expansion of the World Wound. Nowadays, the Pazuzan cultists spend much of their time in the shadows of the region, despite their relatively high numbers. On the Isle of Kortos, tribes of minotaurs, centaurs, and harpies dominate much of the island's interior. The harpy tribes in particular hold the faith of Pazuzu in high regard and act as a notable concentration of his faithful in the region. Of course, the region which expresses Pazuzu's faith most strongly on Galarian is far away from the Inner Sea. Across the ocean, on distant Arcadia, the Halana theocracy rules over a significant portion of the Deadshot lands. In 4473, 3 Pazuzan priests, the Windborn Theocrats, seized control of the nation, forming a new state. They rule over the populace through force and fear, using their control over the weather to inflict suffering upon any dissenters in the form of terrible storms. Their rule is further enforced by the Mavanians, their combined military and police force. The theocracy worships a confusing and shifting mix of sky deities, at the center of which reigns Pazuzu. Opposition to the Windborn Theocrats is difficult, since the Mavanians have the exclusive right to bear firearms in the region, with violations of this law bringing about an immediate death sentence. Still, a rebellion is growing, and firearms, especially beast guns, are regularly finding their way into the hands of the rebels. Relationships. Unsurprisingly, as a demon lord, Pazuzu has numerous hated enemies. I've already discussed his intense rivalry with Lamashtu, the mother of monsters, but there is one more aspect of this relationship which I want to bring up in detail, and this is the reason why we released the Pazuzu video in celebration of Mother's Day. Content warning for this next section. I'll need to talk about things like magical mutations and infusions of evil into unborn fetuses, which might touch on ideas of ableism, birth defects, and disability. My intention is not to imply that anyone who is born with a birth defect or disability is monstrous in any way, only to discuss this idea as it is perceived on Golarion. Lamashtu in Pathfinder takes a special interest in motherhood, pregnancy, birth, and newborns. She's the mother of monsters, after all, and the mother part of that title is very literal. She incubates monstrous offspring in her demonic womb, then births them into the universe. She also reaches out into the great beyond, and uses her evil powers to corrupt other pregnancies, especially on the material plane. She will regularly pass monstrous qualities into fetuses and fertilized eggs, infusing them with magic and warping the children so that when they are born, they will exhibit traits which will horrify the parents. For her part, Lamashtu considers the traits she bestows as gifts, though she's fully aware that they will induce fear, anger, and revulsion in the humanoids the traits affect. Lamashtu takes a perverse pleasure in these actions, and this is where Pazuzu comes in. Pazuzu is so tremendously petty that he actually sees value in denying Lamashtu the joy she might experience in cursing unborn children. So, expecting parents on Golarion have discovered that, if they wear amulets of Pazuzu around their necks and keep images of Pazuzu in their homes during pregnancy, the king of the wind demons will actually use his demonic powers to protect them from Lamashtu's influence. This seems to be a widely acknowledged phenomenon on Golarion, at least in the regions where Lamashtu is known. This is absolutely phenomenal storytelling, and the best part is that Paizo stole this from real-world mythology. In ancient Mesopotamia, Lamashtu, or Lamashtu, was a demon associated with childbirth and infant mortality. While she had a beast-like head and some association with wolves, hounds, and snakes, she seems to have been mainly recognized as the demonic personification of all the potential negative outcomes of pregnancy. Stillbirths, birth defects, and sudden infant death syndrome and maternal mortality were all blamed on Lamashtu. Within that same culture, Pazuzu existed as a demon with two distinct aspects. The first was as a Lilu or wind demon, and his distinctive 4 wings representing the winds from the 4 cardinal directions. The other aspect of Pazuzu was as a demon of protection, one whose power could be invoked to ward off harmful effects. There exist numerous artifacts from Babylon and Assyria which depict Pazuzu's terrifying bestial head. Many of these were amulets which were worn specifically to ward off the evils of Lamashtu. Statues of Pazuzu were placed around windows, intended to keep out Lamashtu's influence and drive her away from the parents and children who dwelt within. It's so cool that Paizo used this history as inspiration for the Pathfinder lore. I especially love that this little Pazuzu figure clearly served as the inspiration for Pazuzu's official holy symbol, which is described as his demonic form standing with his right hand raised. So, yeah, Pazuzu is a protector of pregnancies and infants. That's why he's the topic of a Mother's Day video. Bet you've been wondering that for a while. Getting back to the lore proper, Lamashtu is hardly Pazuzu's only enemy. Even among demonkind, he has other foes. Baphomet is a known ally to Lamashtu and owes much of his demonic power to her interference. While he has no personal dislike for Pazuzu, he actively opposes him for the sake of his alliance with the Mother of Monsters. When Nocticula was a demon lord, she had a great many enemies. As she assassinated her rivals and absorbed their power, the other demon lords began to resent and fear her, and Pazuzu was likely no different. Since her ascension and redemption, Nocticula has become even more despised by demonkind. Most demons hope to destroy her, or corrupt her once again. Even so, they fear the divine power she now wields, and worry that she might redeem them to the side of good if they ever face her directly. While I've found no specific information regarding how Pazuzu views Nocticula, it's reasonable to assume that his opinion of her is similar to that of his fellow demons. As a demon lord, Pazuzu is also opposed to most good and even neutral deities. Of these benevolent forces, however, Ilimancha stands out. Ilimancha, the Harbor Wing, is the Agathian imperial lord who watches over coastal settlements and those who harvest fish for a living. She is also the patron deity of birds, and especially seabirds, and this is where her rivalry with Pazuzu comes from. She competes with Pazuzu for the souls of all flying creatures, and mourns the Vrox and Harpies who have fallen under his influence. Ilimancha is only narrowly worshipped on Golarion, with Magnamar in Varisia acting as the major stronghold of her faith. Notably, as an imperial lord, Ilimancha is roughly on the same level as Pazuzu, meaning direct conflicts between the two could break out on fairly even footing. Despite these fierce enmities, Pazuzu does have a few meaningful alliances. The Demon Lord Deskari was the son of Pazuzu and was among his closest allies for eons. Spoilers ahead for Wrath of the Righteous. Deskari grew up in Pazuzu's divine realm, but sent his avatar to Galarian when his cult took root in northern Avestan. Deskari grew up in Pazuzu's divine realm, but sent his avatar to Galarian when his cult took root in northern Avestan. As Deskari's influence in the region grew, he drew the attention of Eredin, and it didn't take long for the living god of humanity to drive Deskari and his followers into the Lake of Mists and Veils. When Eredin died, Deskari recognized his opportunity. His avatar clambered to the surface once again and took advantage of the new planar alignment caused by Eredin's sudden death to aid in the opening of the World Wound, which connected to Deskari's own demonic realm. For more than 100 years, Deskari delighted in the destruction of Socorus and Mendev, and while he attempted to expand the World Wound further in 4718, he was finally stopped by a group of powerful adventurers. During his life, Deskari had remained friendly and subservient to his father Pazuzu, and it remains to be seen what revenge the King of the Wind Demons might take for the death of his son. Pazuzu has an on-again, off-again alliance with Scothmanoth, the Demon Lord of Debauchery. The two have been lovers and allies on many occasions, but their relationship inevitably falls to bickering and warfare each time it is rekindled. Still, they have more than enough common ground to work together when the need arises, and only when the two demigods are actively fighting would the cultists ever come to blows. Finally, the relationship between Pazuzu and his offspring Uvaglor, whom he sired with Lamashtu, is yet undefined. Lamashtu has made it clear that she feels no particular affection for the archdemon, but Pazuzu has made no such declaration. I could see this going either way. Pazuzu might see Uvaglor as a reminder of his hated former lover, and might discard the child out of hand for that reason. Alternatively, Pazuzu might see in Uvaglor a valuable and powerful potential agent, or even a tool which could be used to overthrow the Mother of Monsters. Both could be compelling, so I eagerly await Paizo's explanation. For players who might be interested in playing characters who follow Pazuzu, here are a few useful details. For those using the alignment rules, Pazuzu is a chaotic evil deity who allows followers of only that alignment. His edicts are fairly straightforward: to tempt others to immoral acts, to revel in flight, and to possess or magically influence others to cause calamities. Conversely, to deny a flying creature the ability to fly, to abuse Pazuzu's name or call upon him for help, and to aid worshippers of Lamashtu are all anathema to Pazuzu. His domains are air, swarm, trickery, and tyranny. He offers the harm domain to his clerics, and clerics and champions of Pazuzu are required to choose unholy sanctification. His holy symbol is a depiction of himself with his right hand raised. Pazuzu's sacred colors are brown and red, colors evocative of raptor feathers and blood respectively. Feathers are a likely common motif among the outfits and accessories of devout Pazuzans. Followers who are blessed with natural or grafted wings will likely display their wings openly and proudly. Those without wings might incorporate feathers prominently on their headwear, cloaks, or jewelry. Demonic runes might be displayed in private during religious ceremonies or rituals, or in moments of open conflict with the public, such as during a battle. Red might be incorporated into robes or tunics, which are cut so as not to restrict maneuverability in flight, or might be painted or otherwise arranged to evoke the idea of blood of the cultist's enemies. Pazuzu's sacred weapon is the longsword, an effective and versatile weapon which Pazuzu himself wields in combat. The unholy property rune is likely common among the followers of Pazuzu. Similarly, the fearsome property rune might replicate the Scepter of Shibashet's ability to force its victims to cower. In addition to the longsword, I could see magical staffs being fairly common amongst Pazuzans, in reference to the Scepter of Shibashet. Even more so, I could see magical staffs incorporated into weapons, such as with the Magus's fused staff feat. Winged creatures might instead favor talons or claws. Pazuzu considers all winged animals to be sacred to some degree, leaving a huge number of options open to followers. Birds, bats, dragonets, or winged insects might all be common familiars for followers of Pazuzu, but those who customize their familiars might choose the flight option and flavor it as the creature growing wings. Popular animal companions might include birds of prey, carrion eaters, or giant bats, drakes, or wyverns. Because of Pazuzu's dominion over all wicked flying things, winged ancestries and those with access to flight might be drawn to his faith. Foremost among them might be the Strix, who might be driven to desperation by persecution and Cheliax. Several sources have noted that Tengus outside of Tian Sha have been drawn to Pazuzu's teachings. Other flighted ancestries like the Sprite, the bird-related awoken animal, and the Dragonette might be taken in by the king of the wind demons as well. Numerous versatile heritages also provide wings and flight. The Dragonblood heritage, for instance, might allow the manifestation of wings, as might the Beastkin, so long as the associated animal is some kind of bird or bat. Nephilims in particular might find Pazuzu appealing, especially those descended from Vrox or other winged demons. Looking into classes, Pazuzu is notable for being one of the few demon lords who actively employs champions among his following. Champions of Pazuzu likely belong to either the desecration or iniquity causes. Clerics of Pazuzu might be members of any doctrine, though their god's warlike nature might imply that the war priest or battle harbinger doctrines are slightly overrepresented. Pazuzu is also noted to create oracles and likely provides the Tempest mystery in his capacity as a god of wind, or the Blight mystery as his capacity as a god of swarms. He might also offer power to followers by acting as the Mosquito or Whisper of Wings witch patrons. Kineticists, elemental sorcerers, or elemental barbarians who specialize in the air element might be drawn to Pazuzu's teachings, as might Storm Order druids or untamed druids who spec into flying animal forms. Additionally, summoners with the Swarm Eidolon are perfect for representing the swarm aspect of the Demon Lord. More broadly, Pazuzu is served directly by Vrox, demons who tend toward the fighter, barbarian, and ranger classes, so these demons might pass such techniques on to their master's mortal followers. Among the many archetypes in the game, the winged warrior is likely the most thematic option of all for the followers of Pazuzu. This archetype offers a combination of improved mobility, new natural attacks, and strafing maneuvers which are relatively rare in the system. Other archetypes might be those which offer access to flying animals, such as the Familiar Master, the Beast Master, or the Drake Rider. The were-creature archetype could be great too, particularly for a character whose inherent animal is a bat or some form of avian. Followers of Pazuzu are typically cruel, violent, and cunning. They delight in the corruption of others, and in convincing others to do evil deeds. While they might derive some divine power from their god, they are careful to always act under their own power whenever they can, for they know the dangers in becoming too reliant on the King of the Wind demons. They likely enjoy the act of flight, and may seek to obtain wings of their own someday, if they were not blessed with them from birth. Their enemies are many, so they likely operate from the shadows until the opportunity to strike presents itself. For GMs looking to incorporate Pazuzu and his followers into a campaign, here are some ideas. Because Pazuzu is a demon lord and not a fully realized deity, he doesn't have conventional divine servitors. His followers are not typically empowered by his own deific might, and are instead simple powerful outsiders who've risen to prominence within their lord's armies. Selharia, for instance, is a fallen Guile Azata from Elysium. Her powers of negotiation and seduction make her especially useful as a diplomat, since she operates from a different perspective than most of Pazuzu's truly demonic followers. Looking beyond his named servitors, Pazuzu is served by rock demons and harpies. Members of these ancestries might be used as messengers or agents of Pazuzu to interact with PCs. Historically, Pazuzu has had several means of interacting directly with his followers. I already mentioned direct possession for those he seeks to torment or punish, but he also has several methods by which he can communicate his favor to those who please him. He might bless his followers with the ability to make use of enchantment effects, or, in more extreme cases, even possession magic. He might command the wind to obey his agents, or to protect them from harm, flying opponents, and projectiles. Most apparent, he might alter the physical forms of his most favored servants, gifting them avian traits like feathered wings, and a voice comparable to birdsong. The first idea I can think of regarding the faithful of Pazuzu is to put them on the role of either the protagonists or the antagonists during a raid on an Allbirth celebration. As I alluded to earlier, Allbirth started as a celebration to Lamashtu, a festival held by monsters like harpies, bugbears, and the like to offer praise and sacrifice to their dark progenitor. As explained in the Lost Omens travel guide, however, Some goblins and orcs have taken up a variation on these celebrations as a means of reclaiming the monstrous aspects of their identity. Orcs and goblins have all been considered monsters throughout much of their history, and only recently have begun to find acceptance among the other ancestries of Avestan. Some members of these communities have begun to celebrate Allbirth in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way, ironically offering praise to Lamashtu for their supposedly monstrous heritage. The festival consists of a dance, a feast, a theatrical interpretation of Pazuzu's betrayal of Lamashtu, and numerous opulent outfits. So, how do we use the cult of Pazuzu here? Well, that depends. If this is a traditional Allbirth celebration, with evil monsters offering praise to Lamashtu, then the players could take up the role of Pazuzu's cultists. They act as evil-aligned protagonists, assaulting the celebration and desecrating the Lamashtan ceremonies. If this is a modern version of the celebration, however, then the PCs take on the role of revelers at the party, likely goblins, orcs, or Dromar who are reclaiming their identities. In this case, the Pazuzan cultists might attack the celebration without understanding its full context, thinking that they're genuinely stopping the worship of Lamashtu. Either way, the PCs must defend the party and their friends, driving the cult away. The other idea I have is to create a plotline surrounding an attempt by Pazuzu to recruit or enslave Uvaglor. Like I mentioned in the relationships section of this video, how Pazuzu feels about Uvaglor hasn't really been explored. I like the idea that he might want to gather his son up as a potential tool against Lamashtu. This might involve a demonic invasion of Uvaglor's own minor demonic realm. In this idea, the PCs would play the part of good aligned characters who must race against the clock to beat the Pazuzan cultists who are trying to invade Uvaglor's divine realm. The PCs might be Varisians who recall Uvaglor's treatment of their people so many millennia ago. Or might be followers of Ashava, who are following in the footsteps of the priestess Sazlaru, who defeated and imprisoned Uvaglor in the first place. Their goal is likely to confront Uvaglor before he can be recruited by his father, likely needing to kill him before he can become a powerful and important agent of Pazuzu. Sources and additional reading. For those of you who want to do some additional reading on the topic of Pazuzu, there are two primary sources to consider. The most up-to-date information is presented in the Lost Omens Divine Mysteries sourcebook from a few years ago, but the amount of detail there is limited to a short overview on Pazuzu's personality and a detailed rundown of Lamashtu's faith. The most exhaustive source, however, is the 2017 Book of the Damned compilation. This book presents a detailed discussion of Pazuzu, the boons he presents to his followers, and his demonic realm within the Outer Rifts. Please note that this book was written back in 1E, so some of the terminology might be out of date. Numerous secondary sources shed additional light on Pazuzu in the Pathfinder setting. The Book of the Damned, Lords of Chaos book from 2010 covers most of the same information as the later compilation I already discussed, with some slight variations in phrasing and presentation. Demons Revisited from 2013 presents information on a few specific demons who are narratively tied to Pazuzu, including the mighty Uvaglor. Guns and Gears from 2021 provides all the information we have on the Halana theocracy. More general information on Pazuzu is also presented in Inner Sea Gods from 2014, Bestiary 4 from 2014, which presents his combat statistics, the Inner Sea World Guide from 2011, and Faiths of Corruption from 2011. Magnamar, City of Monuments from 2012 also presents a brief one-paragraph discussion of Ilimancha, one of Pazuzu's many enemies. Well, that's it. That's Pazuzu, the king of the wind demons. Though he is evil beyond measure and a net force of evil in the setting, I really like him as a power player in the Outer Rifts. The fact that he is so petty that he is willing to protect pregnant people and babies just to spite his demonic rival is a fantastic piece of character writing. Doubly so because it is inspired by real-world history and mythology. We've had a lot of fun putting this one together, and I hope you've enjoyed this special guest-hosted video. Next time, Podfinder Phil will be back to his usual job as host. He's currently working on his player's guide for the Mythspeaker Adventure Path, so expect that in the next few weeks. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.